The assembled fleet was the largest gathering of military vessels in galactic history. 2,000 ships from 300 species, all following the tactical commands of a human captain most of them had never heard of until 3 days ago. Admiral Kesahal watched the formation displays from his flagship, still struggling to believe they were implementing a battle plan that violated every principle of military strategy he'd ever learned. "This is madness," General Vortex growled over the communication channel. "We're going to throw away the last fighting strength of the galaxy based on the theories of a species that only achieved spaceflight 30 years ago. Every conventional approach has failed," Speaker Thyma reminded him, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. "The humans' proposal is our final option." Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now serving as the command vessel for the entire operation. The responsibility was overwhelming, but she'd learned to compartmentalize fear and focus on the mission. Around her, representatives from dozens of species worked alongside her human crew, their combined expertise creating a unique fusion of tactical thinking. "Devourer fleet detected at the edge of the Altair system," reported Commander Yix from her Zephyrian scout ship. 17 primary vessels, approximately 43 smaller units. They're beginning their approach to Altair Prime. "All units, confirm ready status," Sarah commanded. The response came in dozens of languages, translated in real time by the communication array they'd hastily assembled. The plan was simple in concept but terrifyingly complex in execution. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourers, they would attempt to overload them. Every piece of intelligence suggested the entities absorbed energy and matter to fuel their growth and reproduction. But no system, no matter how advanced, could be truly infinite in capacity. "Phase 1, commence," Sarah ordered. The first wave of ships moved into position around the Devourer fleet, but instead of attacking, they began broadcasting energy on every frequency they could generate. Not weapons fire, but pure energy transmission. Communications arrays pushed far beyond their design limits, sensor arrays reversed to emit instead of receive, even life support systems rigged to leak energy into space. The Devourers responded exactly as expected. Their biomechanical hulls began absorbing the energy, growing brighter and more active. Several smaller vessels immediately began expanding, their surfaces rippling with new growth. "It's working," breathed Dr. Wright from the science station. "They're absorbing everything we're transmitting." "Phase 2, Sarah announced. The second wave moved in, but these ships were different. Instead of energy weapons, they carried something the Devourers had never encountered before. Antimatter contained in rapidly deteriorating magnetic bottles. Not antimatter weapons designed to explode on impact, but antimatter designed to leak slowly and continuously. When the magnetic containment finally failed, the resulting matter-antimatter annihilation didn't create explosions. Instead, it generated a specific type of energy cascade that human physicists had only theorized about, zero-point energy fluctuations that existed at the quantum level of reality itself. The Devourers began absorbing this energy as well, but something was different. Their hulls started flickering, phasing in and out of normal space-time more rapidly than before. "They're having trouble processing it," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez, monitoring the quantum sensors. "The zero-point energy is interfering with their dimensional phasing abilities." "Phase 3, Sarah called out, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. The third wave was purely human vessels, carrying weapons that no other species had even considered viable. Nuclear weapons, chemical explosives, kinetic impactors, all powered by crude fusion reactors that were deliberately overloaded to the point of critical failure. But these weren't attacks in any conventional sense. The humans had learned from studying the energy absorption data that the Devourers couldn't distinguish between intentional energy sources and accidental ones. They absorbed everything equally, processing it through whatever incomprehensible mechanisms kept them alive. The overloaded fusion reactors began failing exactly as planned, but instead of exploding, they created cascading energy feedback loops. The Devourers absorbed these as well, but the chaotic, uncontrolled nature of the energy began to have an effect. "Their surface patterns are becoming erratic," observed Dr. Halmet from his Centauri monitoring station. "The biomechanical integration appears to be breaking down." "They're getting drunk on our energy," Chief Martinez realized. "Like feeding pure alcohol to something that's only evolved to process water." Sarah watched the tactical display with growing excitement and terror. The Devourers were indeed becoming erratic, their movements less coordinated, their formation beginning to spread out randomly. "Phase 4, she ordered. "All remaining ships, implement maximum energy overload." Every vessel in the combined fleet began pushing their systems beyond safe limits. Weapons fired continuously into empty space, engines ran at maximum output while held stationary by opposing thrusters, and shield generators were deliberately cycled to create energy bleeding effects. The space around the Devourer fleet became a maelstrom of uncontrolled energy, the kind of chaotic, inefficient, wasteful energy output that advanced civilizations had learned to avoid millennia ago. The Devourers, evolved to absorb and process clean, controlled energy sources, suddenly found themselves drowning in an ocean of incompatible power signatures. Their biomechanical systems, designed for perfect efficiency, began choking on the crude, unrefined energy the human plan was forcing them to consume. "Look at the quantum readings," Dr. Wright called out excitedly. "Their dimensional phasing is becoming completely unstable. They're being forced fully into our dimensional space." "Now!" Sarah shouted. "All ships, implement containment protocol." The final phase was the most dangerous. Every vessel that could generate a gravity field began creating overlapping gravitational anomalies around the Devourer fleet. Not enough to crush them, but enough to create space-time distortions that would trap them in normal dimensional space. The Devourers, now fully materialized and unable to phase out, found themselves vulnerable for the first time in their existence. But more critically, they were experiencing something their perfect systems had no protocols for: energy poisoning. The largest Devourer vessel began convulsing, its hull rippling with uncontrolled energy discharges. Smaller vessels around it started breaking apart as their biomechanical integration failed completely. "They're purging," realized Dr. Wright. "Their systems are trying to expel the incompatible energy, but they don't know how." What followed was unlike anything the Galactic Fleet had ever witnessed. The Devourers, faced with energy they couldn't properly process and trapped in dimensional space they couldn't escape, began to shut down their feeding systems entirely. Instead of consuming everything around them, they entered what appeared to be a dormant state. "Energy absorption has ceased across the entire Devourer fleet," reported Commander Yix, her warrior's voice filled with wonder. "They've gone completely passive." Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief before the next problem became apparent. "Now we need to figure out what to do with them. We can't maintain these energy fields indefinitely." Ambassador Zektar, who had observed the entire battle from the Defiance, stepped forward. "Captain Chen, your species has accomplished what the combined wisdom of the galaxy deemed impossible, but you're right. Containment is only a temporary solution." "Actually," Dr. Wright interrupted, studying the quantum readings, "I think we might have found something better than destruction. Look at these biomechanical integration patterns. I think we just performed the galactic equivalent of surgery on their dimensional phasing organs." The implications became clear as the science teams analyzed the data. The chaotic energy overload hadn't just disabled the Devourers, it had severed their connection to whatever alternate dimension they used for matter storage and processing. They were now essentially normal, if extremely large, biomechanical constructs trapped in ordinary space-time. "They're no longer Devourers," Sarah realized. They're just very big, very complicated organisms that used to be able to consume reality. Over the following days, as the combined fleet maintained careful watch over the dormant entities, xenobiologists from across the galaxy worked to understand what they'd created. The creatures were still alive, but their reality-consuming capabilities were permanently severed. They're reverting to what they might have been originally, Dr. Halmet reported, before whatever evolutionary or technological process turned them into dimensional parasites. Complex organisms that could probably survive on normal matter and energy if properly managed. The solution that emerged was as unexpected as the battle itself. Instead of destroying the former devourers, the galactic community decided to attempt rehabilitation. The creatures were relocated to uninhabited star systems where they could feed on solar radiation and asteroid fields without threatening inhabited worlds. It would take generations to fully understand the implications, but early reports suggested the former devourers were actually capable of environmental restoration, converting dead solar systems into garden worlds given enough time and proper guidance. Your species has not only saved galactic civilization, Speaker Thyma told Sarah during the celebration ceremony, but you've demonstrated that sometimes the most advanced problems require the most fundamental solutions. Captain Chen accepted the various honors and accolades with grace, but her mind was already turning to the future. Humanity had proven they belonged in galactic society, not as junior members, but as equal partners bringing their own unique perspectives to the challenges ahead. We have a saying on Earth, Sarah told the assembled representatives. When you can't solve a problem by thinking harder, try thinking differently. Sometimes the solution isn't about being more advanced, it's about being more creative. The galaxy had been prepared to give up, to abandon everything they'd built in the face of an unstoppable force. But humanity showed up with the one thing that had been missing from all their advanced calculations, the willingness to try the impossible and see what happened. In the end, that made all the difference. Captain Sarah Chen was having what she considered a perfectly normal Tuesday until the alien ship appeared on her sensors. She was commanding the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced deep space exploration vessel, currently conducting mineral surveys in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "Captain, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station, his voice tight with disbelief. "I've got a contact approaching from the outer system. Configuration unknown. Definitely not human." Sarah moved to the sensor display, her trained eye immediately recognizing that whatever was approaching didn't match any known human design. The ship was elegant, almost organic in appearance, with flowing curves that seemed to bend light around them. "Size estimate?" she asked, maintaining her calm despite the racing of her heart. First contact protocols had been theoretical exercises until this moment. "About 300 meters, ma'am. No weapon signatures detected. But their technology is unlike anything in our databases. They're not broadcasting on any frequency we recognize." "Red alert, but keep weapons offline," Sarah ordered. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have a situation." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member aware they were potentially witnessing the most significant moment in human history. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago, and their exploration had been limited to nearby star systems. They'd found evidence of ancient civilizations, ruins, and artifacts that proved they weren't alone, but no living contact. "Captain, they're slowing down," Rodriguez reported. "Coming to a stop just outside weapons range. They're scanning us." The main view screen activated, showing the alien vessel in detail. Its hull seemed to shimmer and shift, giving the impression of something alive rather than constructed, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Park. Multiple frequency bands, including some we've never seen before. They're trying to establish a translation protocol. Put them through, Sarah decided. Whatever these beings wanted, running wasn't an option. The Defiance was fast, but clearly not faster than ships capable of crossing interstellar distances. The view screen flickered and resolved into the image of a creature that defied easy description. 4 arms, scaled hide, and eyes that spoke of intelligence and desperate urgency. When it spoke, the translation came through with a slight delay. Human vessel, I am Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthak Confederation. We come seeking urgent assistance. Your species may represent the galaxy's last hope for survival. Sarah felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. I'm Captain Chen of the United Earth ship Defiance. What kind of assistance are you referring to, Ambassador? We face extinction at the hands of entities we call the Devourers. They have consumed 47 star systems and are advancing toward the galactic core. Every weapon, every strategy, every technology has failed against them. We are preparing final evacuation procedures when we remembered your species from old survey records. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The scope of what the ambassador described was beyond anything humanity had imagined. 47 star systems represented billions of lives and thousands of years of civilization. What makes you think we can help? Sarah asked. From what our records show, your technology is centuries ahead of ours. Zektar's expression grew more desperate. That is precisely why we need you. Our advanced understanding of physics tells us that what the Devourers do should be impossible. They consume matter and energy, yes, but they also consume space-time itself. They exist partially outside normal dimensional boundaries, making them effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons. And you think our primitive technology might work where yours has failed? Not primitive, Zektar corrected. Different. Your species has a reputation from the old surveys for unconventional thinking. For finding solutions that more civilized species would never consider. Lieutenant Rodriguez pulled up tactical displays showing the Defiance's weapon systems, standard plasma cannons, nuclear missiles, and kinetic impactors. Impressive by human standards, but clearly inadequate against entities that consumed star systems. Can you show us the tactical data on these Devourers? Sarah asked. Our xenobiology and engineering teams might spot something your people missed. Of course, but I must warn you, we have less than 5 standard cycles before they reach our core worlds. After that, galactic civilization ends. The next 6 hours transformed the Defiance into an impromptu war council. Ambassador Zektar provided detailed sensor recordings, tactical analyses, and scientific data on the Devourers. The human crew studied everything with growing amazement and horror. Dr. James Wright, the ship's chief science officer, was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. These things violate half the laws of physics we understand. They seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, phasing in and out of normal space-time. The energy absorption capabilities are what concern me most, added Chief Engineer Martinez. They're not just resistant to energy weapons, they actually feed on them, converting attack energy into growth and reproduction. Captain Chen studied the holographic display showing a Devourer vessel in detail. It was massive, easily 10 kilometers long, with a hull that seemed to writhe and pulse like living tissue. Smaller vessels orbited around it like antibodies around a cell. How do they reproduce? Asked Dr. Wright. We don't know, Zektar admitted. They seem to generate new vessels spontaneously after consuming enough matter and energy. The more they devour, the faster they multiply. Like a virus, whispered Lieutenant Park. Or a cancer. Something about that comparison triggered a memory in Sarah's mind. She'd grown up on a ranch in Montana, dealing with practical problems that required practical solutions. Sometimes the most effective approach was the one nobody expected. Ambassador, you mentioned they exist partially outside normal dimensional boundaries. What happens if you try to attack them while they're phased out? Our weapons simply pass through them harmlessly. We can only engage when they're fully materialized in our dimension, which is when they're strongest and most heavily shielded. Dr. Wright pulled up a quantum mechanics model on his tablet. What if we're approaching this wrong? Instead of trying to fight them in normal space, what if we tried to force them fully into our dimension and trap them here? Impossible, Zektar replied immediately. The energy requirements would be astronomical, and we don't understand their dimensional phasing technology well enough to interfere with it. Maybe we don't need to understand it, Chief Martinez interjected. Sometimes the best way to stop a complex machine is with a simple wrench in the gears. Sarah studied the technical data more carefully, her rancher's instincts telling her there was something everyone was missing. The Devourers were described as perfect predators, but in her experience, nothing in nature was truly perfect. Everything had weaknesses, often hidden in plain sight. "Show me the energy absorption data again," she requested. "Specifically, what happens when they absorb too much energy too quickly?" Zektar manipulated the holographic display. There's no such thing as too much energy for them. They seem to have infinite capacity for absorption and conversion. "That's impossible," Dr. Wright said firmly. "Conservation of energy is a fundamental law. Even if they're storing energy in alternate dimensions, there have to be limits." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, drawing on decades of solving practical problems with limited resources. What about energy they can't absorb? Has anyone tried attacking them with something completely outside their feeding parameters? "Every form of energy we know has been attempted," Zektar replied wearily. "Plasma, antimatter, exotic particles, dimensional disruptors, all absorbed and converted." "What about biological weapons?" asked Dr. Wright suddenly. "Viruses, bacteria, parasites designed to attack living tissue?" "The Devourers aren't purely biological. They're biomechanical hybrids operating on principles we don't understand." Lieutenant Rodriguez had been quietly running simulations on his station. "Captain, I've been analyzing their movement patterns. They always approach systems from the same angle, following what looks like optimal energy conservation routes. They're efficient, maybe too efficient." "Explain that," Sarah ordered. "Well, if they're really as perfect as they seem, they might be locked into behavioral patterns that can be predicted and exploited, like a computer program following its code no matter what." Sarah felt pieces of a plan beginning to form in her mind. It was crazy, probably suicidal, but it was also the kind of unexpected approach that had served humanity well throughout history. "Ambassador, how many ships do you have available for a final strike?" "Perhaps 2,000 vessels from all member species combined. But, Captain, they've all failed against the Devourers before." "What if they weren't trying to destroy the Devourers?" Sarah asked. "What if they were trying to save them?" The bridge fell silent as everyone processed the implications of that statement. Zektar's 4 eyes widened with what might have been hope or horror. "You have an idea," he said. "Something that's never been tried." "Maybe," Sarah admitted, "but it's going to require every ship you have, perfect coordination, and a level of trust between species that's probably unprecedented." "Tell me," Zektar said simply. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing she was about to propose something that would either save galactic civilization or ensure its destruction came more quickly. But sometimes, when conventional wisdom failed, the answer came from those crazy enough to try the impossible. The Galactic Council chamber had never felt so empty, despite being filled with representatives from over 300 species. Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthak Confederation stared at the holographic display showing the latest casualty reports, his 4 arms trembling as he processed the numbers. Entire star systems were going dark, billions of lives snuffed out in mere hours. "The Devourers have consumed the Rigel sector," announced Council Speaker Thyma, her crystalline form dimming with each word. "That brings the total lost systems to 47. At this rate of expansion, they will reach the core worlds within 6 standard cycles. A collective shudder ran through the assembled delegates. The Devourers had appeared from the void beyond the galactic rim 18 months ago, consuming everything in their path. Not just planets or resources, everything. Matter, energy, even space itself seemed to collapse into their massive biomechanical forms. They left nothing behind but twisted remnants of reality. Admiral Keshal of the Terran Defense Coalition straightened in his chair, his scaled hide showing the battle scars from 3 previous wars. The combined fleets of the Andorian Empire and the Centauri Federation engaged the Devourer Advance Fleet at Proxima Station. The result was complete annihilation. 700 capital ships reduced to cosmic dust in less than 10 minutes. The same fate befell our finest warriors at the Battle of Kepler's Edge, added Commander Yix of the warrior caste Zephyrians. Our plasma cannons barely scratched their hulls. Their energy absorption capabilities seem limitless. Every weapon we've tried only makes them stronger. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. Each species had thrown their best technology, their finest warriors, their most devastating weapons at the Devourers. The results were always the same: total defeat followed by systematic consumption of everything they held dear. Perhaps it is time to consider evacuation protocols, whispered Ambassador Nelthar of the Peaceful Luminari. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered weakly with fear. We could retreat beyond the galactic barrier, establish colonies in the void between galaxies. And leave everything we've built for 10,000 years, snapped General Vortex of the militant Coraxian Empire. Our ancestors didn't cower when the Shadow Wars nearly destroyed civilization. They stood and fought. Your ancestors didn't face extinction-level entities that consume reality itself, Thyma replied, her crystal form pulsing with stressed harmonics. The Devourers are beyond our comprehension. They operate on principles of physics we don't understand, using technologies that violate the fundamental laws of the universe. Admiral Keshal accessed his personal data pad, reviewing the intelligence reports for the 100th time that day. Our xenobiologists believe the Devourers aren't even from this dimension. They phase in and out of normal space-time, making conventional targeting impossible. When they do materialize, their biomechanical ships regenerate faster than we can damage them. The debate continued for hours, with each species presenting their failures and growing fears. The Zephyrians had attempted to ram their ships into Devourer vessels at near-light speed. The impacts had been absorbed and converted into energy that made the enemy stronger. The Andorians had tried quantum disruptor weapons that had successfully destroyed entire moons in previous conflicts. The beams simply bent around Devourer hulls like light around a black hole. What about the theoretical possibility of dimensional phasing weapons? Suggested Dr. Halmet, the Centauri Federation's chief scientist. If we could match their interdimensional frequency— We've tried, interrupted Commander Yix. The Coraxian science fleet spent 3 months developing phase shift technology based on captured Devourer fragments. The first test resulted in the complete destruction of our research facility and the creation of a spatial anomaly that's still growing. Ambassador Zektar finally spoke up, his voice heavy with despair. In my species' ancient texts, there are prophecies about the end times, when the Void Eaters would come to claim the universe. I always believed them to be metaphorical warnings about the dangers of unchecked expansion. Now I wonder if our ancestors somehow knew this day would come. Prophecies won't save us, General Vortex growled. We need weapons, strategies, something that can actually hurt these things. Every conventional weapon has failed, Thyma stated flatly. Antimatter bombs, stellar collapse weapons, reality disruptors, nothing works. The Devourers seem to exist outside normal physical laws. The chamber's main display updated with new intelligence from the outer rim. 3 more systems had gone dark in the past hour. The Devourer advance was accelerating, their hunger apparently growing with each consumed world. "There must be something," whispered Ambassador Nelthar. "Some weakness we haven't discovered, some approach we haven't tried." Admiral Keshal shook his head slowly. "We've analyzed every engagement, every encounter. The pattern is always the same. They appear, they consume, they move on. No communication attempts have succeeded, no diplomatic overtures acknowledged. They don't seem to view us as intelligent life, merely as fuel for whatever incomprehensible purpose drives them." "The evacuation fleets are already being prepared," announced Speaker Thema. "Essential personnel and genetic samples from all member species will be loaded onto the fastest ships we have. If we can reach the intergalactic void, perhaps we can survive long enough to find another galaxy. Start over." The weight of those words settled over the assembly like a funeral shroud. 10,000 years of galactic civilization, countless achievements in science, art, and philosophy, billions of lives and thousands of unique cultures, all of it about to be abandoned to entities that consumed reality itself. "How many can we save?" asked Dr. Halmet quietly. "Current estimates suggest we can evacuate perhaps 1% of the galactic population," Thyma replied. "The logistics are challenging. Most civilian ships lack the speed or range needed for intergalactic travel." Commander Yix's warrior instincts rebelled against the concept of retreat. "There has to be another way. Some piece of technology we've overlooked, some alliance we haven't formed." "We've contacted every known species in the galaxy," Admiral Keshal said. "The result is always the same. Those who try to fight are consumed. Those who try to hide are found and consumed. There's nowhere left to run within our galaxy." "Wait," said Ambassador Zektar suddenly, his forearms moving rapidly as he accessed historical databases. "There is one species we haven't contacted. They're listed in the old exploration records, but dismissed as primitive and potentially dangerous." All attention focused on the Vorthak ambassador as he pulled up a star chart showing a small spiral arm on the galaxy's outer edge. "They call themselves humans," Zektar continued, "from a small yellow star system in what they call the Milky Way's third arm. Initial contact was attempted about 200 years ago, but they were still confined to their home system, barely capable of crude chemical rocket technology. If they're that primitive, what could they possibly offer?" asked General Vortex dismissively. "Perhaps nothing," Zektar admitted. "But the initial survey reports noted some unusual characteristics: high adaptability, extreme aggression when threatened, and a disturbing tendency toward what their translators called thinking outside the box. The survey team recommended avoiding contact until they achieved proper civilization." Dr. Halmet accessed the old files, his eyes widening as he read. "These reports are unusual. It says they survived an ice age by using controlled fire, developed agriculture independently on multiple continents, and showed remarkable innovation in tool-making." "Ancient history," Thyma said impatiently. "Even if they've advanced significantly in 200 years, they couldn't possibly have the technology to face the Devourers." "Perhaps not," Admiral Keshal mused thoughtfully. "But at this point, what do we have to lose? Every other option has been exhausted. If we're truly facing extinction, shouldn't we explore every possibility, no matter how remote?" The debate that followed was brief but intense. Resources were desperately needed for the evacuation fleets. Time was running out as the Devourers continued their relentless advance. But the haunting possibility that somewhere in the galaxy an overlooked species might hold an unexpected key to survival was too compelling to ignore completely. "I'll authorize a single scout ship," Speaker Thyma decided. "Fast reconnaissance only. If these humans have achieved spaceflight, we'll attempt contact. If not, The ship returns immediately to assist with evacuation efforts. The meeting adjourned with the weight of galactic extinction pressing down on every delegate. As they dispersed to oversee their species' final preparations, none of them could imagine that in a small, unremarkable star system at the galaxy's edge, a young species was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most effective solutions come from those who don't know that certain things are supposed to be impossible. The scout ship, Whisper of Hope, departed 3 hours later carrying Ambassador Zektar and a small diplomatic team toward a tiny blue planet whose inhabitants were about to learn that they were no longer alone in the universe.